Welcome to the Visibility Project podcast.
Welcome to the Visibility Project podcast.
Welcome to the Visibility Project podcast.
Started by a group of citizens in a small Michigan town with a like-minded goal
of increasing the visibility
of the unseen and unheard populations in our community.
Our guests will share stories and insights
with the goal of increasing our awareness and knowledge
of various aspects of diversity and equity
to create a more connected, empathetic, and inclusive community.
So, let's get to work.
Let's get to work.
So let's get to work.
So, let's get to work.
Let's get to work.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Amy Phoenix, and today I am here with Erin Patrice Walker, who is a Midland community member and mom of 4 sons. Erin has earnestly sought practical experiences by connecting with people and cultures. Erin comes with years of training and experience facilitating conversations through empathy, collective strategies, and storytelling. Erin has worked in various capacities in the communities that she has lived in and strives to create bonds and relationships that allow people to form bridges they can all walk across to achieve a common goal motivated by peace. She currently shares her teachings as a community engagement ambassador by facilitating workshops, guest speaking, panels, and conversations under her nonprofit, Breaking Bread Village. And today we are here with Erin to hear more about her story behind the work that she does.
All right, so welcome back to the Visibility Project podcast. I am your host, Amy Phoenix, and today we are here with Erin Patrice of the Breaking Bread Village. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you. I appreciate you for having me. I'm excited.
Awesome. We're so glad to have you here today. All right, so we'd like to begin with a little bit of your backstory and why you are part of this community, why you're joining this podcast, what gets you up in the morning, just whatever you'd like to share to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Sure. So, again, thank you for having me. I'm really honored to be here with you all today. Wow, when you talk about backstory and what brought me to Midland, it's really a long story, but I promise I will make it very short. So, as you know, I am a mother of four young men, and when they were younger, actually my youngest was 4 years old, we actually fled to Midland. We were in an abusive domestic violence relationship. All of us were, essentially. And so we had to get out of Cincinnati. That's where we were. And I have family that lived here. And they said, hey, come here. You know, it's good schools. Come here and start over. And so that's what we did. So that's really what brought me to Midland. And of course, you know, I've shared with you many times that it was really hard getting acclimated to this environment, just the change, and then also trying to heal, right? So you're trying to do all of that, be a mother, you know, present yourself, you know, somewhat presentable to the community, you know, when you're kind of in shambles, right? So you're trying to do all of that and be a mother and acclimate and heal. So yeah, it was a lot. So, but yeah, so that's really what drew me to helping people now, is because I remember what it felt like to feel a little bit isolated. I knew and know what it feels like to kind of not feel like you fit in. So I've always kind of called people like myself wildflowers. And, you know, I've just been drawn to wildflowers and connecting us all so that everybody feels included. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. Thanks for sharing a little bit more of what brought you here to this town and that piece about wildflowers. I'm really curious about that in terms of that piece you mentioned in regards to not fitting in. Mm-hmm. And wondering if you'll just expand a little bit more on that and then how you connect that to connecting with wildflowers.
Sure, yeah. You know, I've always been fascinated with wildflowers because when I studied about them and I would see them out, it was just always really interesting to me to see them just kind of grow in places that you don't always see flowers, and nobody really kind of sometimes, you know, intentionally planted them there. And they thrive and they're beautiful, they're colorful, and it's just so many different types all in one, you know, a section. And so I don't know, I just always felt like a wildflower. I always felt like I was not necessarily like cultivated like other people, and I wasn't kind of molded like other people. And in my opinion, I still thrived, right? In being different. And it just kind of, I always was different in high school and in school. I never was a person that like had to be in crowds or be in a group. I've always kind of been a solo person, but also knew a lot of people. So I was always kind of accepted, but not. Does that make sense? I don't know if it makes sense or not. But, I just never needed those crowds and that, but that can be lonely sometimes, right? You can kind of wonder like, oh, why am I not invited to this? Or why was I not? Because I was just always kind of different. I always shared myself in a different way with people. So I don't know. I called myself a wildflower, and I started to kind of connect with other people who were different and kind of rare, or just not necessarily a part of the normal, flow of life and societal, groups and sects or whatever, And so, yeah, that was always a thing for me, the wildflower, and just kind of knowing what it feels like, that isolation. And people don't understand what they do to a person when you want someone to be just like you. And if they're not just like you won't invite them in. So we have to kind of get past that. And that's part of what inspired the work that I do, is that we all have a seat at the table, right? We all have a purpose. We all can play a part in helping the world get better, but we need to be able to see that first before we can get to that point. So,
yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question.
Oh, you absolutely did
Okay.
answer my question. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much. There's a few different pieces that really touched me as I was listening. The isolation, the need to connect, but do it authentically is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
And then would you share more about what you've created a lot and done a lot of different endeavors over the years? I know that because I know you personally.
Yeah.
However, you have one that is somewhat well known around here, and you're doing a lot of work, and I know there's some more forthcoming. So would you share more about the Breaking Bread Village and its strings to your heart in this community specifically?
Sure, yeah. So I always tell people, when you think back to 2020 was a crazy year for all of us. And I don't care where you sit on different ideas, perspectives, whatever. It was a crazy year. I mean, we had a whole pandemic that most of us in our lifetime had never experienced to that magnitude. It was an election year, right? So it was stuff going on as far as political divisiveness. And then even with the pandemic, we had divisiveness about, how you should care for that, for yourself during the pandemic, right? So we had mask issues, vaccine questions, all kind of stuff with that. And then we also had social justice divisiveness that took place as far as because that was the year with George Floyd, and that really sparked a lot of conversation and divide. So all of this stuff was happening literally at the same time. I mean, just kind of compacting upon each other. And I've always been the person that kind of sat back and watched things. I've always kind of been an observer. And I'm listening to people, and I watch people, of course, on social media. I'm like, wait a minute, these people are really fighting with each other, literally. It was people that I always admired as, we say the sweet older, woman that, that they have that image of the crocheter, and they knit and they are very calm and always, talking about peace. Those are the same people that at some point in time were wishing for people to get sick with the pandemic and die because they would not, take a shot or wear a mask, right? And that was shocking to me. So on the left and the right, I saw so many things where I just was like, wait a minute, people are really kind of losing it in a sense. And when I say losing it, I mean just they don't even know what they're saying. I think at times they just were, a lot of that was fear and anger and just disappointment. It was a lot of different emotions, right? And so I'm watching this, and I don't know if you remember, but when we were younger, they used to have those cartoons where it was the dogs and the cats fighting. Mm-hmm. And it was all this cloud of smoke, and you couldn't really tell who all was in the fight. You just saw sometimes arms and legs kind of coming out, right? And then you would always have that person that would come out and then watch it all take place. And that's what I felt like I was doing. I was kind of watching all this, and I'm saying, wait a minute, it has got to be a better way to talk through this and share what we feel, because I felt like a lot of people on both sides of things had valid points, right? And so that's kind of what sparked my interest to create the Breaking Bread Village. I had no idea that it would take off or do anything, right? I just said, okay, instead of complaining about an issue, let me try to bring some type of, solve, some kind of like help solve the problem in some kind of way. And it was very interesting because as I listened to people and I took in what people said and I read what they wrote, like, oh my goodness, everybody on both sides are really saying the same thing. I mean, when you look at stuff as far as like people want to be healthy, people want to be safe, right? People want freedom. What that looks like is different for different people. The first thing that really sparked it was the gun debate, I'm like, wow, both people are wanting to be safe. What that safety looks like is different, right? How you get to the safety is different. So some people believe that if they have 20 guns in their house, that's safety for them, right? I get it. And then other people feel if they have none, that's them being safe. So it's still safety. You know what I mean? That's the covering conversation. But what happens is that we get lost along the way to how we get to that safety. And that's where the divide comes from. So I thought that if people could come together, talk about it, may not leave still, they still may leave disagreeing or whatever, but at least they were able to hear each other and also be able to share what they feel, because I think that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And along the way, you've really created so many experiences for that and so many different topics. And I actually have a personal situation that I'm like, it'd be great to have you sit there and create space for that for me. So maybe I'll get in touch with you about that separately.
Yes.
But
we'll do a one-on-one behind the scenes.
It's true though. To be able to sit and share and people be in their just genuine experience while having these different perspectives and having it brought together by someone in the community who can step back and see it. I know, we all have our own personal things, but for you to hold that space for others can really bring people together in a way that has been so hard as of late and over our whole entire existence as a species.
No, it's the truth. No, it's the truth.
Yeah.
Very true.
So I have lots of curiosities about this, and I want to also touch on the topic that we had spoken about when we, decided that we would do this together. And it was really looking at how your gifts make room for you and us being in our individual talents and that. And so I wonder if you'd expand a bit more about why that's such an important topic to you right now at this point in time and in your life.
Sure, yeah. I mean, anybody who knows me knows that I say that all the time. I say it all the time, that your gifts will make room for you, my gifts will make room for me. And that comes from a place of oftentimes, especially in different neighborhoods or communities, right? People have certain expectations of what qualifies a person to share an expertise or what makes them an expert, right? People have different things that is like, say, for instance, if you don't have a PhD, then you can't even speak at certain tables, right? If you don't have certain experience, then you can't even sit at certain tables. And for me, I don't always believe that. And I say that to say that I think that a lot of times we really miss out on opportunities with some really awesome people because we have these checklists that people have to meet, right? And if you don't if we're not able to check everything off about that person, then they're not even a factor, right? You don't even count them in. And I just find that so sad because it's been times where I've been places and a person who has a certain type of job that people deem, in society, they deem that it's not as affluent as the other. I've talked to people like that. I remember one time I used to work in corporate America, and there was a lady that she was the one that watered the plants throughout the building. Oftentimes very invisible. I mean, nobody really actually talk to her much. Every once in a while you see someone that would say good morning or something like that, but she was also, oftentimes very invisible, which happens a lot, right, in our society. The people that are the caretakers, I call them, that make sure that when we go into the bathroom it's clean. That those kind of jobs should be held to a high standard because they make our experience better. But anyway, I remember she would always just, kind of be invisible. And me being me, I wanted to talk to her and just say, hey, how you doing? Da, da, da. So I'm talking to her, and she used to share so much great wisdom. Oh man, I used to just get lost in her words because she had so much to offer. And I thought to myself, like, wow, if somebody would really sit down and talk with her, I mean, they would really be blessed, right? And so that was something that I always took with me, along the way. And just, in that idea that we miss out sometimes on people. So that's why I say your gifts make room, because we don't have to worry about what society says deems you acceptable or worthy to sit at a certain table. You get to do that because what you have to offer is important, it's needed. It's up to us, though, to see the worthiness in ourselves, right? And once you activate that power, so to speak, sky is not the limit. It goes beyond that. You know what I mean? So that's where I always said that for me, because I'm not a scholar, right? It just never was my thing. I tried different paths, and because that's what people say you're supposed to do, once you get out of high school, and, we have this like template of how people are supposed to live their life. And it just didn't work for me. I just am like, oh no, I'm a hands-on. I always tell people I would rather sit down with Buddhists as opposed to reading about them. I've always been, and I love to read too, but you get what I'm saying? I love the experience of actually connecting with people, because to me, that's when you truly learn. That's when you really kind of understand people and connect. So that's a really long way of answering that question. But yeah, that was always a thing to me, that we have to just honor the natural gifts that we have. Because people always ask, well, who taught you to do this? Or who taught you that? And of course you learn stuff along the way. I mean, I'm not saying I'm a island, but there's some things that just naturally are gifted to us. I truly believe that, and we have to honor those gifts and use them to help others and ourselves. So,
yeah. Oh, I really love that answer.
Oh, thanks.
Yes, thank you for taking your time to that answer.
Yeah.
I have a question about what challenges have you faced along the way inside yourself or with others in terms of really anchoring into your gifts and utilizing your gifts, and what has strengthened you and your resolve to walk this path of life this way? Oh man, I mean, so many, right? I mean, I think a lot of times, and that's why I talked about kind of activating it within yourself, because a lot of times we're our own critic, right? We're the worst ones. We're the voice in our heads is the one that's saying, oh, you need that PhD to go to that table, right? Oftentimes you do believe what society says deems you worthy. I mean, that's always a struggle within yourself to say, you know what? No, wait a minute. I can do this. I'm worthy of this. I am just as good as somebody else. So I think that's really always the first battle, is kind of conquering the voices in your own head that say, that you aren't supposed to be there, or why would they want you there? Why would they want to hear from you? So yeah, I mean, that's really essentially, I mean, there's other hurdles where you have to kind of fight with, and those struggles with people within a community or what have you. But most time it's ourselves. Yeah. And so how do you strengthen yourself, like when the doubt comes in, or how have you over the years? Because you do seem pretty solid in it now, listening to you and talking with you. But I'm sure there are moments, or there have been moments. So what has really helped you, or what helps you continue to stay strong in it?
Self-talk, man. It's funny because I talk to myself all the time, and I said, if people heard the stuff that I say to myself, they would think I was nuts. But I literally sit in a mirror and I tell, like, girl, you got this. Like, are you ready? And I always ask myself, are you ready to conquer the day? Like today, I'm not worried about next week, next month. Today, I wake up, I look out, especially when the sun is out, and I'm like, okay, you got this, let's do it. And I'm my own motivator, right? Because what I found is that if I don't do that for myself, nobody will. I can't depend on somebody else to make me feel like I'm supposed to be there. So, and then too, I come from a lineage of very strong people, especially strong women. My mother is one of 7 girls. So, and they were raised to be very strong, very independent. And of course that comes with its own struggles, right? But I always saw really strong women that walked into rooms with their heads held high, always kind of put together, and not necessarily like, I'm not talking about like riches and things like that, but just kind of, they just presented themselves well. And they come from an era where, women, you weren't even supposed to leave the house until you had everything put together. But I just remember as a young girl, always seeing them walk very tall, And so that's just something that I learned. And so one thing that I always taught myself was that any room that I walk in, I'm going to walk in there as if I'm supposed to be there. If somebody says the VIP section over there, I'm like, oh, where am I supposed to go? No, I'm kidding. I'm not. But I'm just saying, you have to believe that you are just as worthy of being there as somebody else. So I carried that with me into, especially after being in such a bad relationship where I remember being different than who I was supposed to be. And it's crazy because when you're in those type of relationships, you don't even recognize you're so low. You don't even know it because you're in it, right? And I recall looking at old photos of that time, and I didn't even look like myself. I was like a shadow of myself. It was actually quite traumatizing to watch those look at those pictures because I didn't realize I looked like that, right? And so after coming out of that and healing from that, I told myself I would never, ever let anybody put me in that position ever again. And I don't care who it was. I'm not even talking about intimate relationships, period. If you don't see my worth just as I see yours, then what do we have, right? I have to value you. You have to value me. That's a reciprocal, relationship, reciprocated love, right? And so, so coupled with my upbringing, and then going through that experience, and not only being strong for my children, but for myself, I say, you come too far to go back to anything else that's lower than what you should be, right? Yeah. So that's part of what gives me that strength is that, I'm supposed to be here. Yeah. I came through too much, so I've earned this seat at the table. And then I also believe that if no one invited me to one, I would create my own. I'll create my own table because then I can invite people in. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that inner look at your experience, because part of this, of course, is for us to share experience and learn together and to hear what it's really like, not just what we see out there, on the surface, but to have a window into that moment in the mirror like you just described.
Yeah.
So thank you. All right. So as a Black woman in Midland, I'm reflecting on how much that has probably impacted your experience here because of we don't have a super diverse population in this town. It's mostly white. So I'm just wondering how that factors in or has factored into all of the inner work that you've done and that in this movement to really create a table where you can invite people in, whether or not you're invited in to another table.
Wow. It's impacted me a lot. So I've been here, I think 18 years now. I don't know. I think I've been saying 18 for a couple years now, so it may be long. I can't remember. But when I first moved here, so let me just paint this picture. So I come from the inner city of Cincinnati, right, where it's all type of people, mostly African American, right, or Black, right? And so I come to Midland, and mind you, I came here in January. So when I came here, it was literally 14 days straight. It snowed like a blizzard, like literally. And I remember I was already kind of going through a sadness, right? Grief. Because even though I was splitting from my relationship, it was still, it's grief. It's, it's kind of like a death, right? So, and I'm in this space where it's snowing every day. I'm in my mother's basement. I came from living in a house to my mother's basement with my 4 children. Starting all over. Most of my stuff I left because I didn't even want to bring it with me. I go to Meijer. Meijer it was kind of newer. It wasn't that old. And I remember walking into the store and right in that opening, right when I stood there, and I remember kind of stopping and pausing because I was so taken aback by the fact that I saw no person of color, like nobody. I never saw that before. So people talk about culture shock often coming to a big city, I did the reversal, right? And I'm like, oh my goodness, there is, and I remember I just stood there for a few minutes and people probably were like, what is wrong with her? It was kind of overwhelming because I had never been in that environment before. I had never seen a one level mall, okay? I mean, we call those plazas, you know what I mean? And so I was like, is this it? So it was just so different, a downtown with no high buildings at the time. So it was just alive. So it's, it was so much deeper than just being a Black woman, but it was okay, now I'm a Black woman in this space that is so different. How do I find my way here? Mind you, when I went to the schools to take my children, I had on my city gear, right? I'm fresh out the city, so I'm like still, I have fuchsia hair, these big earrings, big mouth, and the mothers, when they were at the school functions, would just look at me. They didn't really know what to say, it was just, I just remember, back to those time, and so I would go home, even though I was happy to be out of that situation. I'm gonna be honest with you, I questioned, like, was this the right move? I mean, can you imagine questioning that after coming out of a abusive relationship, and you're not saying you would have been better off still in that situation, but wow, was this a good move? So it was really some sad times for me, like for a couple years living here, trying to find where I fit in because I didn't work at Dow. I wasn't a part of academia, right? So it's like, where do I belong here? And so it took some years to shake that off and say, you belong here because you're here, essentially, right? But it took some time for me to find that strength and that placement, right? And just kind of make it solid. Like, okay, you are here, and since you're here, do something. You have to do something, because I've always been a doer. Like, I'm not good at, like, talking about stuff that, talking. It's like, yeah, let's get a plan, but let's activate it. Let's do it. So yeah, it was hard. And I mean, I always tell people, because most people that I work with one-on-one, or if I give talks or, things like that, I always say, most time, especially if you live in communities like this, you've never experienced being the only one in any room, right? Most times, I mean, you talk to, like, my mother, my aunt, friends, people I used to go to church with, right? They've had experiences of being the only person, right? I mean, so walking into those rooms and saying, okay, I got to come in here and be strong, because it's not easy all the time. And until you've experienced that, you'll never understand what that feels like to just show up, right? And be authentic in that space and say, you know what, I'm going to still be me, but it's hard. So now I don't care. I'm like, whatever, you know what I mean? But at that time it was definitely, difficult. Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. I really appreciate you painting that picture too. I wonder how many will be able to relate in their own ways, and also just have a much deeper understanding of what it's like for someone else when that is the experience of coming in, and especially with the background, and I can see the different layers and that of which you've built to get to where you are, where you don't care. And I wonder, would you be willing, that statement you made of, like, you saying to yourself, you belong here because you're here. Yeah. And I wonder if there's someone listening who's questioning if they fit in this town. Maybe they're similarly from a different background, or they don't have the degree, or the whatever. Like, they just feel that way.
Just able, right? The different abilities and different,
yes.
I mean, just like I said, academic levels and, different classes, I remember years ago, it was a fight to even convince people in this area that there was poverty in this area. So things like that, I think that the first tier is getting people to acknowledge that there are different type of people here. And I think that we're there now, right? We are starting to have these conversations and implement different things. But I'm saying at that time, right? It was a lot of, oh, that doesn't happen here. Well, it definitely does. I just saw it. You know what I mean? And I mean, even when we talk about, like, the opiate crisis, right? it definitely happens here. People are using here and are addicted here and are struggling here. But I think it took some time for us to acknowledge that. So, and that's the thing is that, I mean, even with people of color or, like I said, different abilities or what have you that make people different, acknowledging them and saying, you are here. I see you. Let's talk. Let's go for coffee. I don't know, whatever, but help people feel like they are a part of what you've created, right? And then sometimes you understand that you may not want to be at that table, right? It just depends on what's being offered there and what's the energy, right? So I had to also come to that realization too, because I was just so upset sometimes, like, why don't they see my worth? Why don't they see my worth? And then I realized I don't want to be at that table. That's a table of a bunch of facades and a bunch of hierarchy so some things like that, I'm okay. I had to learn to say, you don't want to even be there. So why would you try to force them inviting you in when that's not even a place that you feel like you can be authentic anyway, and that other people that you want to bring in will feel good at? So why fight to belong there? I'm the kind of person, if I go to a restaurant, a person doesn't want to wait on me or take my money for whatever reason, I don't fight them to take my money. I go elsewhere where it will be appreciated and received. You get what I'm saying? So I had to also get to that part of the maturity and saying that some places aren't worthy of me. And I say that, not that I'm higher or more than them, but I'm saying that the way I want to show up, if you're coming where you're going to be nasty to people or treat people whatever kind of way, that I don't want to be there. And that's not a space where my heart and my love should be utilized anyway. You get what I'm saying? So that's also a part that I had to get to in the growth process of realizing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm hearing that clarity and power in knowing yourself and knowing what you stand for and what you stand with and what you're bringing, and that you're going to choose to do that in spaces where it is valued. You are valued, and that's what you're working to create with others.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you something real quick, Amy. Years ago, people always called me crazy. I mean, they probably still call me crazy, and that's okay. But years ago, and I always tell this story because it's just kind of stuck with me for a very long time. But years ago, my ex, well, he still like speaks life into me. But the church I used to go to, he was sitting in his car. He got out of his car, and he walked by me, and he calls me Sporty-O. That's the nickname he calls. He said, Sporty-O, come here. And I'm and him and his wife was walking by, and he asked me very, very quickly, people always call you crazy, right? And I laughed. I'm like, yeah, they call me crazy because I always had these crazy ideas or, just whatever, and these different ways that I want to do stuff. And he goes, people always call you crazy. And I said, yeah. He said, then be crazy. And I'll never forget that because it sounds so simple. It sounds so random. But he said that to me. He looked me in my eye. He said, then be crazy. And walked away. Didn't no more to the conversation. That's always stuck with me because in that moment, he essentially said, give yourself permission. People talk anyway. They're going to talk about you. They're going to critique you. They're going to do it anyway. So just be yourself. And not that he wasn't saying that I was crazy, but he's saying if that's what they're saying anyway, they continue to do what you see that you need to do. Don't worry about the chatter because you have to be yourself. You have to do what you are here and purpose to do. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for that story too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love that. I wish we had the pictures to go along with this.
Oh, I know.
The expressions and everything. I'm so glad that you have your show where people can interact with you in your fullness.
Yeah.
You know?
That's important.
It is.
The energy of that. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. And I wonder if you were sitting across from someone who was feeling that and you were saying, you belong because you were here. What else would you follow that with?
I don't know. Because to me, that's it, right? I mean, because I think a lot of times we try to convince people of their value, right? And really us just being us is value enough, right? You get what I'm saying? Like we try to how do I want to say it? Like spell it out and write it out. Well, you're valuable or worthy because of this and this. And we know that changes, right? So somebody could say you're valuable to this space because you're always, so full of joy. But you can have one day you get up and you're not feeling that joy. It's times for myself where, as you know, I'm a talker. Everybody knows I'm a talker, right? But it's some days I sit in just kind of silence and solitude, right? Because I just need to decompress. So my point in saying that is that we are valuable because of these different assets, but those things change, right? They're ever evolving. And sometimes I want people to just know that they're valuable just because, right? When I say I want people to be able to just be, that's the end of it. Not be happy, be this, be that, which I do, of course, want them to be happy, but I want people to just be. So I want you to feel comfortable and safe and have that permission to, just be that day. So if today you're not feeling it, just be, right? If today you don't want to be the happy friend, because people depend on people to be that sometimes, or the one that always has the word to give, or to sow into others. If you don't have that today, you still are valuable. You still are worthy to be there. You get what I'm saying? So that's really what I feel when I say that you just are, you're worthy of being there just because you are you and you are there. So yeah.
Yeah. All right, good. I hope that some of our listeners take that to heart.
Yeah.
And it brings me to a question about some other efforts that you've had in the community, and you work with youth, and that. What else are you out and about doing that has been really meaningful for you and for others?
Really just sowing seeds. I mean, I talk about that as well, like being a seed sower. And so really right now, the Breaking Bread Village has really taken a lot of my attention and energy right now. But yeah, I've always been very purposeful and intentional about working with youth, kind of sewing into them. It was really interesting. I remember a young boy, I'll just call him Johnny, and Johnny would always come in. He was kind of rough around the edges. He was probably, what grade was Johnny at the time? First grade, kindergarten, very young, right? And, at school they would give a piece of fruit or something in the morning as the breakfast or whatever, and, public schools here. And Johnny would always take, because a lot of kids wouldn't eat theirs, and he would take it and put it in his book bag. And he would get in trouble because, he was taking more than what he was allowed. And I remember the teacher was so upset. I keep telling you, Johnny, you cannot take these belong to someone else, even though they were going to throw them away. We knew certain kids that weren't going to eat it, right? But they had to put it on everybody's desk, and Johnny would collect them. And I remember the teacher would get mad at him and fuss. And I remember I said, let me talk to him, because in my mind I'm like, it's got to be a reason why he's taking this food, right? And remember I took Johnny to the side. I'm like, Johnny, man, what's up? Why are you taking the stuff? You're going to get in trouble, blah, blah, blah. Aren't you tired of getting in trouble? What's going on? And I'll never forget, this is a first grader, kindergarten. I can't remember exactly, but 5, 6 years old, right? He said to me, and I get kind of like, because I remember him telling me that his sister needed the food, his little sister. Mom would always be asleep. And we found out later she had drug issues. So that was the way he made sure she ate. And I remember, I don't know why this gets me choked up every time, but I think about he was getting chastised for trying to take care of his sister, which that should not even been a responsibility of his at that age, but he took it on as his own. And I remember once we found that out, then we were able to just gather up everything and send it home with Johnny because we understood his story. We understood his why. And so that's always been important to me, to understand people's whys, even though I don't always agree with it, right? Whatever people believe or why they do what they do, you don't always agree with it. But in that moment, once we were able to understand and hear from him, he said it so like, oh, his heart, I mean, he was just so genuine about it, right? And sincere and very adamant, like almost where Johnny was going to keep taking that food because he knew that that's how he could make sure his sister ate. And the fact that that was his burden to carry, but the fact that I could see the relief on his face when he was able to tell this is why, and also the joy in his face when we would, instead of chastising him, we gathered it up for him to help him to take care of his sister, even though he should not have to do that, right? We were able to then be the village. We were able to then be the community, and then be the person that he could depend on, as opposed to being the person that's going to beat him down even further. So that's why I do what I do. So a lot of stuff that I do is not always necessarily a organized effort, but I believe in different stories like that I've had with children. It helped me to deal with the adults. Because children are transparent, they're raw, they're real, they don't pretend. And so, I don't even know if I answered your question, but it just made me think about that when you talk about the different efforts that I've done. I remember that years ago dealing with him, and I remember the pain on his face every time he got in trouble, but every day he would still do it. And I'm like, what in the world is going on with Johnny? And that was why. And that's essentially how I got to even more so formulating what I do with the Breaking Bread Village. Once I understand the why, and once we get to hear it, we sometimes can have more empathy for a person. And then instead of beating them down more for their beliefs or why they do what they do, we can maybe understand and come together as a village and as a community to help them, as opposed to discarding them and dismissing them. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing that too. I really hear just powerful alternatives to the tendency to condemn or judge or turn the other way, and instead really seek that understanding.
Yeah.
And to offer, to be able to come in and support when that's needed.
Yeah, we don't know people's stories. We have no idea the stuff that people go through day to day. I mean, I remember somebody I met right here at Live Oak, that I would see all the time. I'm like, you're here all the time in the morning, and she came here because she was waiting for her husband to finish dialysis. So when she takes him for dialysis, she would sit here and enjoy a cup of coffee. And I get emotional about stuff like that. Because sometimes you don't know what people are going through in your mind. Like, some people will look at her and say, why is she wasting her time every morning here, sitting here, sipping that same cup of coffee for hours? And she's waiting for her husband to come out of dialysis. She's his primary caretaker, so she's given up somewhat of like the life that she may have planned, right, to care for him. That's a selfless act, right? That's a beautiful act. So the least I could do is maybe offer her to pay for her cup of coffee one time when I see her, or give her a conversation while she sits here. And that's why I feel like the work of the Breaking Bread Village is so important, because that's the heart of it. The heart of it is the connecting part, right? Or we all have a story. All of us could sit down and probably cry together, right, with our story. But yeah, just going into it knowing, even if I don't ever hear the story, I know that there possibly could be one. And when I go into it that way, knowing that even though I don't know their story, I know it possibly could be one. So I'm going to treat them as if they have a story, instead of judging them or degrading them or making them feel low, because of whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful art that you're weaving here.
Thank you.
In the community.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
those ways. Are there things about our specific community that really inspire you to focus in these ways?
That inspired me, yes. Again, I said, coming into a community such as Midland, which we know is a beautiful community, so I don't want anybody to walk away feeling like I'm saying that it's not. But we also know that every community can grow, right? And what inspires me is that I know what it felt like coming into this community and not feeling like I belonged. So that's what inspires me, is that when people come, and again, this doesn't have anything to do simply or solely on color, right? I'm talking about class was a big thing for me here, and where people are placed and how they're treated depending on if they have or don't have, right? Or if they're parents both, golf at the country club, or, if they're in this program or this group. So for me, that inspires me to bring people together. So when we do the community events with the live shows, the panels, I'm very intentional about who I bring together, in hopes that have people from different demographics that can glean from each other, as opposed to seeing that person as either an enemy or someone that they can't relate to. It's really interesting because people find that they do have things that they have in common, as opposed to always seeing what they don't have in common. So that's really what inspires me, is bringing people together to see past all the outward stuff. Like, all that stuff it's really silly that we base our associations solely on what we see. You know what I mean? As opposed to getting to know the person, the heart and soul of the person. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that too.
Yeah.
It does really offer that, just that connection, possibilities for people to see beyond what they see on the surface.
Yeah. Yeah. We're deeper than that. So hopefully we're deeper than that.
Going back to one of the earlier points that you made about people really bringing their talents and gifts in the community. So many of us have been moved through the template that society offers us, and may not even really be in touch with their talents or gifts. Or they might think they're too quirky or crazy or whatever it is. What do you encourage for members of our community to get in touch, to utilize, to make connections with others who will appreciate their gifts?
So a lot of the work I do is reflective, like reflection work, right? So I usually try to tell my own, like looking within myself in hopes that somebody else will look within themselves as well. So what I had to do was I had to accept who I was, right? When I first moved here, again, I have all this like bling and flash and color and just different energy, right? And I noticed that a lot of people were like, darkers and, like beiges and whites and, all these like blues and very, very safe. I call it safe colors, right? And, just safe hairstyle. Everything was just really safe, right? Nobody really stood out. And this is not a knock. I hope I'm not coming across that way. I'm just trying to paint a picture, right? The contrast of what I felt and what I saw, right? In my interpretation. So what happened was, after a year or so of being here, I tried to kind of downplay myself, because I was like, I'm already tall, and I'm a Black woman, so I'm like, and I have pink hair at the time. I'm like, okay, I need to tone down, right? Because I always felt like nobody said this to me. This was all within my own head, right? I always felt like I was just out of place. I would go in and people would look, and it just was always this spectacle within myself, right? How I saw it. And so for a couple years, I tried to wear and I like different colors. I mean, I wear black and stuff so I'm not saying anything against it, but I tried to really downplay my look. And, anybody that knows me knows I love bangles and, big earrings. And so I tried to downplay it. And I'm like, you know what? No, this is silly. This is I literally tell myself, girl, this is silly. Stop. You have to be yourself. And so I stopped. And I was myself. And I'm like, you know what? And I had to tell myself, whoever wants you will want you. Whoever wants to be around you will want to be around you. If people love you, they will accept you just as you are, just as you accept them as they are. It's all reciprocal. So I was like, okay, I have to do this. So I said, I'm about to just be myself. I'm going to be loud. And of course, I mean, we understand that in different settings, you have to kind of adjust that, right? You don't have to take all the way take away from who you are, but you can adjust in different settings, right? I mean, in certain ways, I'm going to be at a barbecue that I won't be if I go into another, a boardroom or something. So I get that, but I still was in myself. And so that's what I would tell people, if that was your question. How would they kind of, say, what, it's okay for me to be here, and that, and kind of get to that space is accepting you. So again, this all goes back to you. It's all you. It's all us. It's all the voices in our heads. It's the stuff that we do, the games that we play within ourselves, So yeah, I just started a lot of self-talk. And realizing that and then I realized too, I was my best self when I was my whole self. You get what I'm saying? When I tried to like tone down and be a little bit different and fit in, I didn't even fit in because people could tell that I was not being authentic. People could feel that. People know when you're not being your true self. So I said, I am doing them a disservice and myself. So come on, hair, come on, earrings, come on, all of it, bright colors, let's go. And, those who appreciate you will appreciate you. That's just the end of it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that too. With that and with your work in the community with the Breaking Bread Village and just making the connections that you do, what do you encourage with others who are listening, admiring, maybe a little questioning when they listen to this and they hear you or they see you out, and here we are talking about gifts and really encouraging people to utilize their gifts and step into them. How do you see us encouraging each other more with that in the community?
Celebrating each other. I mean, people just don't really understand how far a kind word goes. Like if somebody is doing well, utilizing their own gifts. I mean, I remember one of my sons when they were younger, he took welding. That was one of the electives you could take at the school. And I remember his teacher saying, like, he was a natural. Like, oh, he's so good at this. Like, I barely have a teacher stuff. He just picks it up. That was a gift that he was able to do with his hands. There's some people who are gifted, in engineering or, painting where, I try, like, I feel like I'm a creative, but sometimes when I've tried to paint, it just becomes a big green blob and does not look. And then I see other people and I'm like, oh my God, they truly have a gift. Some people who can sing. There's some people they have gifts at listening, right? They are just good listeners. Some people are the people that are good at being in the background, right? They're not really like want to be in the front, but they're good at helping, organize and stuff. Everybody has a gift. And I think that for us to encourage people to use them is we have to celebrate them and help people kind of see their gift. Some people are good at things and they don't realize they're good at it because it's natural to them. You get what I'm saying? If you are naturally good at something, you've always kind of done that, right? For the most part. So to you, that's just what you do. But if someone says, oh man, Amy, you're a good listener, or hey, you really are good at this, that, and the other, they're like, oh, I am good at that. And they're able to see that everybody's not, right? Everybody's not good at that particular skill set, or everybody does not have that particular gift. So when we celebrate each other and help uplift and inspire each other, then people are able to see like, oh man, I am good at this. Maybe I'll do this more. But if we never look into people and kind of try to uplift people, sometimes people don't even know that it's laying there. They don't know that it's within them because it's always been. Does that make sense? So like if you always have it, you don't realize how special it is until someone says, wow, that's really special because everybody can't do that. And they're like, you're right. Yeah.
Absolutely. Sounds like really celebrating people's gifts and uniqueness and helping them see where it's appreciated too in relationship.
Yes, because we all have them. We all have gifts. And I don't think people realize that we all have. Some people are good at like strategy. Some people are good at, just all kind of different stuff, right? Some people can write really well. Some people are good at math. I suck at math. Math is like a different language to me. The only thing I can count is money. Okay. Other than that, when you ask me to do math, I'm like, no, but you want me to write something? I'll write it in a heartbeat. We all have gifts. And I think that we have to do better sometimes at saying, wow, you're really gifted at that. Especially starting with our children, helping them see what they have to offer to the world so that they will feel empowered as they get older. Yeah. Instead of trying to stifle it.
Definitely. That really feeds into your belief that you have to be your own yes.
Yes. You have to be your own yes. That's something that I tell myself all the time because I spend so much time, so many years waiting for someone to tell me yes. And I missed out on a lot of stuff. Even though I believe that everything happens in its own divine time, I'm not worried about missing that. But I know that I missed some things because I wanted to hear someone else tell me, yes, you're worthy of this. yes, you can do this. Yes, 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 right? And then I realized one day, I'm like, wait a minute, I can be my own yes. I can say yes. Yes, yes, it's time. Yes, you can do this. Yes, you are worthy. Yes, you are incredible. Yes, you're this. Yes, you're that. And, I was talking to someone the other day and I said, I think that the reason why people struggle with that oftentimes is that, for me anyway, my culture, the way I was raised was that was like boastful, right? Or being arrogant. If you say you're beautiful or to yourself, right? You're supposed to tell other people, you're not supposed to say it to yourself. So it was this idea that that's being boastful or, having this big ego. And I'm saying, well, we all have ego. We have to tame that thing sometimes, but it's there, right? But I think once I got out of that crippling stage of this fear that I'm being arrogant because I tell myself I'm beautiful, right? I can't tell myself I'm beautiful, because when I tell it, I don't have to wait for someone else to tell it or validate me, right? So that's where that concept comes from, that it's okay for me to be my own yes. It's okay for me to say, yes, you can start this organization. Yes, you can be this person. Yes, you are worthy of that. Yes, yes, yes. So, yeah. And then too, when you say yes to things and you already have a template for what you see as coming after that yes, you start walking in that. When you believe you're beautiful, you walk a little bit different than if you don't feel like you are. It's just the truth, right? If you feel like you're intelligent, you walk a little different than if you don't feel like you are. So if you don't walk that way, other people won't feel that either, right? Because you're huddled down and you're looking kind of, no. So I'm like, yes, 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 yes to myself every day. So when I go out and I have to do things, I've already confirmed myself. I've already validated me. So when I walk into those spaces, I'm good, right? So if you never say it, not you, you know what I mean? But if the people, whoever, never say it, I've already said it to myself 1,000 times before I got there. So, yeah.
Really resting in your yes. And I imagine that also allows the no's to just kind of fall away. Yes. They don't fit anymore. It reminds me of a children's book that my grandma got my kids about how society will put dots and marks on people based on society's standards. And there was this one character in the book who, in doing some things similar to you, they related it to a spiritual context, but it was in the similar.
This is all spiritual.
Yeah, it was similar. It all goes along together. And as that character did that, those marks just didn't stick anymore. And that's exactly what I'm hearing you say as you stand in your gifts.
Because you're going to hear no. I mean, that's my mother always, because I've always been a person that's asked questions. I mean, anybody that's known me since I was a kid, I've always talked. I've always asked questions. I've always wanted to know. I've always been like that. And my mother used to always tell me the worst someone can tell you is no. Right? So it's like, I've never been afraid to ask, but sometimes those no's would sting. I mean, they would sting, right? Like, because again, I was seeking validation. So when you seek validation and someone confirms what you thought, that they didn't see you as valuable, it hurts all over again, right? But if you already go into it knowing that you're valuable and that you're worthy, when they say no, in my mind, I say, oh, they mean not right now. Or not with them. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen, right? So I walk in it because I believe that things will happen. I already believe that. I already believe that things will happen. It's stuff happening right now that I believed 2 years ago that's happening right now, which I'm so thankful for. But my point is that when they say no, there are outside force, right? That, again, like you said, it doesn't stick because I know it's going to happen. So I change their no to a not right now. Not with me. Yeah. Because if they say not right now, I say, oh, it's right now. It's just not with you. That's okay. Or, oh, it's not this second, but maybe next week. It's okay. So I that's what I use instead of it kind of like deflating me, right? And getting me like, kind of sitting on my couch eating ice cream, crying, watching, Hulu movies or something. I say it empowers me. It's like, oh, that means it's coming. Like, that's always like, I'm like, oh, it's coming. It's just not with them. Okay, that's all right. And it's true. Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Well, with all this encouragement that you have shared with us today,
Yeah.
I have one last question for
Sure.
you and anything you want to add. What is your heart ask to our community at this time?
Yeah, just to see people, and to make room for people. People, again, have a lot of background. We all have many things that have, kind of come together to make us who we are. All of us have, childhood, teenage years, 24, whatever age bracket we're in, we have different parts that's happened, different things along the way that's happened to us that's created us in who we are, right? And oftentimes, and I'm not saying that you have to sit down with everybody and know their whole backstory, but in understanding that everybody has a story and understanding that there's many different parts to them, right? We're all not these like one level people. We have all these different dynamics to us, and understanding that and saying, you know what? I see value in you just because you come with experience of life. You literally come with experience of life. Some of us have so much experience of life that we could teach thousands of lessons. So I think that in sitting with people and understanding that we all come with something, we all bring something to the table. If you go into it understanding that when meeting with people or, in these community efforts or these community groups, I think that people will interact with each other a little bit differently. And then also understanding that most of us are trying to get to the same goals, right? I mean, I think about when people say, we want peace. What that looks like is different for people, right? When you talk about, being healthy to people is different, right? How you get there is different. And I'm referencing just like different stuff we've been going through in the last couple of years and how people see health differently, right? Again, like I mentioned with safety, people look at that and to them, it looks different. So I think that if we go into conversations or, like I said, these meetings or community efforts, realizing that most of us have the same end game in mind, like the same goal, right? It's just a matter of the journey we take to get there. And if we can understand that better, then we might be able to actually work together as community to get to that goal. And then understanding that it's okay for us to think differently. That is okay. We don't have to all think alike because it's just not realistic, right? I mean, even people that work in different community efforts, they all have different thought process, religious backgrounds, political thought processes, all of that. But you're still there for a common goal, whatever it is. So I think that if we take that into consideration, that everybody is valuable, everybody is worthy, everybody has a right to be there. You don't get to determine if somebody has a right or not, right? We don't get to determine that. Now, you can determine if you interact with them, but you don't get to say they can't be there. You don't get to do that. So I think if we go into it, those type of thought processes that just like we want to be accepted, somebody else does too. I think that's a very simple concept. Oh, wow, I want people to just treat me kind. Somebody else may want that too. So you can exercise that with others as well. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just want to thank you for sharing your story, your work, your heart with us today, and your encouragement for all of those people, all of us to recognize that, we are here, we belong here, and that we're part of this community together.
And we're in it together. So we better get it together because we're in it together, right? But thank you for having me here. Thank you for allowing me to share this space with you. So yeah, appreciate it.
All right. Until next time.
Yeah.
You can stay connected with the Visibility Project by subscribing, liking, and sharing on your favorite podcasting and social apps. Look for us at the Visibility PRJ.
Financial support is needed to keep the conversation going. Go to midlandfoundation.org/give and select the Cultural Awareness Coalition Endowment Fund to be part of the project. Note podcast in your donation notes.
Thank you for listening.
We see you.
We hear you.
And together, we are making a difference.